Hi, everyone. I'm Leo Castro, Chief Marketing Officer of NMI, and I'm joined here today by Vijay Sondhi, CEO of NMI. We're excited to kick off a series of fireside chats to keep our partners up to speed on how we're dealing with COVID-19 as a company and offer up some insights that might help you and your merchants through these times. This first one is with Vijay, as I mentioned, and we'll follow up with other ones with other executives at NMI. Given that, we welcome your feedback on this format and look forward to any suggestions you might have on future topics. Today in particular, we're going to talk about maintaining resilience. But before we dive into that, Vijay, would love to get you in here and maybe, for folks that don't know you, tell the audience a little bit about yourself, particularly your payments background, and maybe one fun fact about how you and your family have adjusted to the current situation.
Thanks, Leo. I have been in the financial technology and payments industry for over 25 years and been a part of NMI for about 3 years now, joined as a board member and then became CEO 2 years ago. I really got to know a lot about the payments industry, spending many years at Visa in San Francisco at the global headquarters. I have been through a couple of pretty big downturns. One was the dot-com crash back in 2000, and the other one was in the 2008 financial crisis. And so, having that scar tissue and having gone through some ups and downs, I think is very helpful in a situation like this. Now, you asked about a fun fact. Let me think about that. Maybe something more recent is quite relevant. During the work from home era that we're all going through, my family decided that we were finally going to learn how to play poker. And so my teenage daughters and my wife and I, every other night, sit down after dinner and play for the grand total of $2. And as of now, the teenagers are winning about 80% of the time.
Wow, that's great background. And I think we're all looking forward to hearing more about how your poker game progresses here in the coming weeks. So let's dive into it. We're about 4 weeks into this COVID-19 crisis. And at this point, pretty much everyone has executed some kind of business continuity plan, whether they developed it ad hoc or had one in place already that they just dusted off. At NMI, we were fortunate that we had a plan in place and were able to act decisively to implement. What are some key highlights of the plan that you'd like to share for the audience?
Well, we have had a business continuity plan in place for quite some time. Now, no one ever thought that we would suddenly have it tested in such a dramatic fashion. We were able to move to a work from home situation actually within about 2 days. And within 5 days, we had the entire company 100% work from home. Now, we are a small company relative to the payments landscape. We're about 200 employees, but we punch way above our weight class, is what we like to say internally. Our network last year processed over 1.2 billion transactions and about $70 billion of payment volume, and about 135,000 small business merchants actually rely on our payment processing network. So we always knew that it was important for us to have redundancy and resiliency built into the plan. Now, it did go incredibly well. We did have some hurdles, like many people. We ran out of things like 4 and 5G hotspots, ordering laptops that didn't get delivered on time. But despite those hiccups, we had everyone working at home, including the folks that work on our card present credit card reader part of the business, where we have EMV level 2 kernels, level 3 processor certifications, and they're actually taking Verifone and Ingenico terminals to their home and had to move their desktops into their living rooms or home offices if they're lucky enough, and we're able to run those test scripts with test cards and iPhones and Google Pay and what have you. So overall, pretty happy with how it worked out.
Great. Now, what are some learnings there? Like I said, we've had a chance to we were fortunate that we had a business continuity plan in place. What are some learnings now, and maybe speak to the culture that helped carry it out?
Yeah, I think that here at NMI and really broadly as a society, we have said from day one, and we continue to say it, our number one priority is the health and safety and wellness of our employees, so that we can service our partners and our end merchants. And that is the priority, period. It's not the business prerogative or financials. It's all about health. And so every decision that we take, and one of the lessons we learned was that when you prioritize, health and wellness of your staff, they actually really appreciate that. And so I would say that, one thing that I figured out, I didn't know that we could have a 200-person company running 100% from home within 2 days.
Mhm.
I feel like my team might have said if I'd asked them to do it, oh, we need 6 months or 2 months or 3 months. But when we had to, we were able to. And I think the old saying, necessity is the mother of invention, holds true here too.
Yep, great. Now, one of the things I think, now that we've gone on to this work from home situation, one of the things we've observed is that more and more employees are having sort of these feelings of isolation and loneliness. You touched on employee health and that being certainly a priority. So it's been sort of top of mind for all of us. What's maybe one thing that NMI is doing that could be food for thought for our partners as they may be facing similar issues?
Yeah, we're now actually 5 weeks into our work from home program here at NMI, and we moved quickly. We moved actually in advance of the regulatory authorities and the jurisdictions we operate in. And like many companies, we put together, when we think of health, we think of physical health and mental health. And so we put together a set of social initiatives because, people want to connect with each other. So, we do yoga classes twice a week, happy hours, the, fireside chats and the water cooler drop-ins via video conference, which I think most companies are doing. And what we found is that the novelty kind of lasted for a few weeks, and then it started to kind of wane. Now, of course, like with any group, you get the folks that love it and they drop into the happy hour, and the folks that want nothing to do with it. I think that one of the things that we did, which helped us a lot, is we decided to go after what's called the wisdom of the crowd. And rather than management or managers or small teams figure out what we should do to have that connectedness, social connectedness, we actually let the company just come up with ideas. And that has been, a great way of doing it. One of the things that came out, this sounds a little silly, but it was kind of fun, a lip syncing contest. And, watching one of our customer service technicians, do Saturday Night Fever with his dog and wife with a face mask was actually the winner. And it was pretty interesting to watch. So I think just tapping into the wisdom of the crowd, having that connectivity, lots of communication, that's worked well for us.
Yep, yep. And thanks for sharing. And, I think as an insider here, I can say firsthand that it looks like it's helping. Now, one of the things that you've mentioned here internally is that you reject this notion of calling this the new normal. And, that sounds a little provocative on the surface, but kind of tell the viewers here why you think that way and how it actually hints towards greater days ahead.
Yeah, we started to hear this phrase, the new normal, a couple of weeks into this, and I kind of had this visceral reaction to that because I think the phase that we're in now, if you could call it maybe a bridging phase or this lockdown phase, we are all as a society, as a company, as a community, trying to flatten the curve. That's why we are staying at home and making sure that our healthcare workers don't get overloaded and our first responders can deal with the folks that have unfortunately fell to the illness. So, in that type of environment, when people start saying the new normal, my reaction was, this is a temporary normal. We don't like it. We found that there are some good things in there, but let's get through it as a temporary normal, not acknowledge it as a new normal. And then on the other end of this, the world will be different and it will be changed forever. But that was really where that came from.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, I think, and that's helpful context. And thank you for sharing your vision there. And I think we'll look forward to seeing how we sort of execute that here in the coming weeks. Now, one of the other things that you mentioned as we were prepping for these fireside chats is that it was important for you to roll in the voice of the partner in this and everything we do. Now, you've had a chance to talk with many of our partners over the last few weeks, and it seems like there are several common questions that have come up consistently. And I think it'd be great for the audience to hear about some of those. So why don't we go through a few of those now?
Yeah, there's another saying that people say there's always a gift or an opportunity in every conflict or setback or failure, and that certainly was the case here. Like many companies, once this crisis started to unfold, we made a list of our top partners and customers, and we started to make those phone calls. And I've probably talked to over 100 CEOs and partners within our industry, outside of the industry. And some themes do emerge. One of the things that people are dealing with is just the sheer uncertainty in front of us. And when you're in an uncertain time and, your budget is something that you can't match, and it's very hard to know, how long a recovery might take, you're sort of struggling with, how do I plan for the future? And I think one of the things that I heard as a common theme that we do, like others, is scenario planning. There's a scenario A, B, and C, and we try to go through those and really make sure that we can weather the worst storm. And so that's what gave us the confidence, is in a worst case, we know we can get through this. I think one of the other things that, we've heard from folks, and really broadly, there are kind of three categories, for want of a better phrase. There are the folks that are thriving, the poster child of the thrivers, people that have a product or service that is now increasingly in demand. Would be maybe Zoom would be the poster child there. There are the survivors who are kind of in the flat, just humming along. And then there are the divers who have had their business really hit hard. And I feel, a lot of empathy for retailers and a lot of our clients there that have just had to shut down. Within each one of those categories, certainly the survivors and the divers, is how can you engage with your clients and your customers and your ecosystem? And one of the ways of doing that, of course, is to reach out, because people will remember when you made that phone call or when you spoke to someone at a time when, they weren't buying anything from you, they weren't able to give you anything, and you just reached out to them in order to solidify the partnership.
Yeah, and I think especially in this day and age right now, I think that emotional connection is very important. So I think that advice is sound and tried and true. So great. So I think that's helpful. We're kind of coming to the end here. Do you have any final thoughts for our viewers here today?
Yeah, I think that we're sort of pacing ourselves through this environment we're in. I mentioned that we are kind of in a bridging phase right now. We're in a lockdown. We're trying to flatten the curve. And we want to get through that. Once we are through the bridge, we'd like to be in a phase that would be known as a recovery, and we know there will be a recovery. And so that will then shift our attention later on to a kind of fuel the recovery mindset. Now, we're not there yet.
Yep.
So what we're trying to do is to build the foundational building blocks for when we can press that button and get into it. I think the other thing is the world that's going to be on the other side of this, I alluded to it earlier, is going to be different. It's going to be permanently changed. And that goes for payments too. And so what are some of the things that we know or we could guess would be different forever? I mean, there's some simple ones: contactless payments, hygiene, the ability to take payments without touching the card or the point of sale device. Certainly, if there had been a debate around omni-channel, that debate is over. If you have physical locations, you have to have an e-commerce or an online addendum to that. And if you're only online, you might have to have a place where there's an ability to pick up or drop off things in a physical manner. The other ones are the work from home has really changed the way we think about social connections. I think there'll be a mixture of virtual and physical mixing of people, and it will be more of a mixture than you have to be somewhere in a physical location. That'll go for working, that'll go for socializing. And I think the last one is what we feel is there will be a shift from what was the goal of efficiency, better, faster, cheaper, just-in-time inventory, global supply chains, to resilience. And resilience means it takes a little longer, it's a little bit more expensive, fewer partners, rather than sort of date every person you run into, which we had sort of in the fintech boom, lots of little startups coming up. You're probably going to have, 2 or 3 core partners, people that are stable, that have been here for a long time, that will be there for a long time. And you will solve for resiliency versus, speed or some new, great feature or function. And at NMI, we want to be here for our partners. We've been around for 20 years. We'll be here for 20 years and longer. And as I mentioned, we punch above our weight class. We run a very large systemic payment platform. And so we feel that we're well positioned for that world of resiliency.
Yep. And yeah, thanks for those insights. And I think that's super helpful for our partners that are listening. So we've come to the end here. So I wanted to thank our partners who've listened, or viewers here. Be on the lookout for more content from us as we share different insights on payments and the business overall. The best way is to stay tuned and follow us on LinkedIn, where you'll always be up to date on our latest content. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Leo.